Jono Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all have moments in our lives that I think we look back on and we can recall exactly how we felt at that time. One of those moments for me was in about 1994 or 95 or thereabouts, walking out of the movie theatres after watching Once Were Warriors for the first time. And as a relatively young man at that point in time, I suppose, who'd grown up in a middle-class European sort of setting, and not having ever been exposed to anything like that quite so graphically, Mr. Speaker, I remember how shocked, how drained, how just embarrassed, I guess, in some respects, that I was. And Mr. Speaker, at that point in time, I think there was a number of people across New Zealand who were waking up to the idea that there was stuff going on behind the doors of the houses in our neighbourhoods that we were suddenly awakened to and realised we weren't happy about and felt the need to do something about it. Mr. Speaker, since that time throughout our country, subsequent governments have endeavoured to do everything that we can to ensure that we reduce the level of domestic and family violence that's going on in our households. But Mr. Speaker, over that time period, it seems that whatever we have tried, it seems still only to get worse. Well, Mr. Speaker, yesterday this government announced that we are now going to take a different approach. And I know Mr. Shearer doesn't like the word comprehensive, so I'll use words like thorough and multifaceted and extensive and integrated, because that is the way that this government is looking to go forward in addressing what is an absolute blight on our society. Mr. Speaker, these are some grim statistics, but as has been said by a previous speaker, a woman who experiences strangulation from her partner is 7 times more likely to die at the hands of that person. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Child, Youth and Family received over 150,000 notifications about care and protection issues for children. Mr. Speaker, nearly half of all homicides in our country and reported violent crime are related to family violence. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely time that we take a thorough, multifaceted, extensive and integrated approach to doing this, and that, as the Prime Minister has announced yesterday, is now going to occur. Mr. Speaker, recovering from a physical assault is incredibly challenging, and I know a number of people who have experienced that. But if that assault has been inflicted by someone who is supposed to love you, someone who is responsible for your care, then recovering from that act and repeated actions is even more difficult for people to do. Mr. Speaker, we've got to ensure that our system does not re-victimise victims, and so as a part of this plan, Mr. Speaker, we're going to make it easier for people to get protection orders put in place. We're going to ensure that actually they don't, having been victims, then have to kind of go through big processes, and that NGOs and other people will be able to seek to get those protection orders put in place on their behalf. And I know amongst the NGOs and community organisations that I've talked to in Palmerston North, where I live, Mr. Speaker, they will be welcoming this so that they can act on behalf of people rather than simply giving them advice and sending them on their way. Mr. Speaker, there's going to be greater resources putting in to ensuring that our perpetrators will take responsibility and providing assistance to them for those who, once they can take responsibility, seek to break themselves out of that cycle and start to take a better, more appropriate role within their families. Mr. Speaker, it's about getting harder. It's about, we've got to put in place more particular offences so that we can strengthen the justice system to ensure that we deal with these perpetrators in the most appropriate ways. Mr. Speaker, this House is often divided on debates over ideology, but I look forward to, when the legislation comes forward over the coming months, to this House working together to help put together legislation that will strengthen our fight against this thing which is absolutely a scourge on our society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
clear